Governments and, of late, private companies and individuals have been sending objects and people into space for the better part of 70 years now. Yet we've barely scratched the surface when it comes to unraveling the mysteries contained up there. When space missions aren't concerned with commercial or military work, such as deploying or repairing satellites or conducting surveillance of the ground, the astronauts have spent their time carrying out scientific experiments. The vast majority of the scientific experiments conducted in space have had to do with space itself, such as its effects on the astronauts or the spacecraft, or how microgravity affects various life forms. Very few of the experiments done up there have been intended to satisfy scientific curiosity about a hypothetical and inconsequential matter, such as what would happen if you fired a gun in space. In fact, there's no need to. What we've already learned about guns, space, and physics tells us everything we need to know. You may remember from elementary school science class that a fire needs three things: heat, fuel, and air, in order to work. A gun works by harvesting the power of fire, in a manner of speaking, by creating an explosion that propels the bullet from the chamber, according to live science. However, as there's no air in space, a key part of the equation is missing. But before getting into more details, make sure you have subscribed to our channel. Will the bullet would fly off into space indefinitely? That's not a problem, however, as modern-day ammunition contains its own oxidizer, a chemical that allows combustion to take place in the absence of air. Since everything you need is right there in the bullet, the gun and bullet will work in space just as well as they would on the ground. There would be some minor differences, of course. Unless you shot it from inside a spacecraft, which would be a terrible idea, you wouldn't hear the explosion, due to the lack of air in space to carry the sound waves. And instead of a wispy vapor trail like you see in the movies, the smoke would just expand in a sphere from the tip of the barrel. On the ground, gravity and friction will mean that the bullet can and will only fly so far. In space, gravity and friction are still factors, but their effects are completely different, and this would be particularly evident if you fired a bullet up there. Harvard astronomer Mattia Koop told Live Science that, once the bullet is fired, it's likely going to travel in space until the heat death of the universe. The bullet will never stop, because the universe is expanding faster than the bullet can catch up with any serious amount of mass. Another question that arises is that will the shooter could be shot in the space? Of course, this assumes that the bullet won't be captured by the gravity of a star or planet and eventually brought back down. But considering that objects with actual mass, such as stars and planets, take up so little of the universe compared to the vast expanse of space, the likelihood of that happening is extremely small. In space, absent gravity and friction, that means that the bullet will be sent off into space in one direction, the shooter in the other. One of the amazing things that you might have heard or ever paid attention to is that you could actually shoot yourself in your own back. Imagine being an astronaut orbiting above the Earth, on a spacewalk, for example, far enough away from your spacecraft that you could fire your gun without endangering your crew. You, your craft, and everything else at that altitude are all orbiting the Earth. And, as Live Science explains, if you fired your gun at exactly the right angle, the bullet would also go into orbit around the Earth. If this all sounds a bit theoretical rather than practical, keep in mind that, as Schultz explained, scientists have actually considered self-hits in space in order to investigate impacts, with tiny asteroids, space junk, and so forth, but thought better of it. But wait! Soviets/Russians have been taking guns into space for decades. The matter of guns in space isn't just theoretical, at least not for the Soviet, and later Russian, space programs. As NBC News reported, for decades cosmonauts took guns into space, but not with the intention of firing them while in flight. They had a much more practical reason. In the early days of the US space program, returning astronauts landed in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where the Navy would scoop them up out of the water. The Russians, however, did and do send their crews back to the ground, specifically, the vast grasslands of Kazakhstan, according to the Smithsonian's Air and Space, and there they may have to wait hours, if not days, for rescue. If you find this information helpful and amazing, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button.